Good Monday morning. Mondays with Mark, and we're on time-ish, and we're also on the right day. It is technically Monday. Literally, it is Monday. I'm here at Green Bay Botanical Garden. Wanted to show you some of the beautiful later summer, early fall season blooms here at Green Bay Botanical Garden. And one thing that can happen in your garden, especially a perennial garden, is when you buy all your plants in the springtime, flowers sell in greenhouses, so people are always attracted to what's in bloom. So you could end up with like a really heavy garden with spring and early summer bloomers, and then a lot of times people don't think about buying plants. They're going doing all their things in the summer, and then your garden is kind of barren and desolate this time of the year. But here, luckily, at Green Bay Botanical Garden, we have this beautiful Schneider family grand garden, and it has a lot of plants that are native to Wisconsin, or other plants that we found to be pollinator magnets, and those guys tend to bloom this time of the year when you might be looking for something for your garden. So I thought we would take a little walk along this strip here and kind of see what's in bloom, and I can tell you what I know about some of these things. So one thing that is like a bloomer that started a few weeks ago and blooms continuously for quite a long time is this Calamintha Montrose White Nepeta. That thing is amazing. Like, you can see all the bumblebees on it and honeybees even, and it has that white airy flower that you can almost use in any type of garden design because it kind of weaves everything together. White's a nice like weaving color. And if Rachel kind of looks back there, you can see this other plant, Allium Millennium. That is an ornamental onion that blooms this time of the year. A lot of the ones you buy and plant as bulbs bloom earlier in the springtime, but Allium Millennium blooms later. And there's also one called Summer Beauty that's a little pinker. And then I think there's a newer-ish one called Windy City for the Chicagoland area. It also has that nice onion texture, so you get that then throughout the year when it's not in bloom. A couple more things as we look at. This is Anise Hissop, and this is a really awesome plant, I think, because it's very fragrant. And then these little florets are actually edible, and you'll see a lot of bumblebees and bees on that because every little floret, has nectar, and then it gets pollinated, of course, too. So I've also noticed a lot of goldfinches flying out, like flocks of goldfinches flying where this has seeded out, because that is maybe a thing you want to think about, is it can seed out and get a little bit aggressive seeding. You can see on the edge here where that happens. But we're letting this all happen naturally and organically here at Green Bay Botanical Garden. So I want to kind of walk back here a little bit more. One also random thing to think about, you really don't think about fall color in perennials a lot of the times, but this halfway to Arkansas Amsonia here, it had a little blue flower in the springtime. It has these seed pods, but this one is one that has amazing fall color. It's kind of like an amber golden color, so that's one to look for when you come here later. All right, so as we step back here, we have this showy black-eyed Susan that's in bloom here. You've probably seen different ones like Goldsturm and stuff for sale, but this one I've noticed doesn't have the black spot issues quite as much. And there's also one called American Gold Rush, which is a newer selection of Rudbeckia that flowers all the way down from the top all the way to the bottom like a big mound, and it's supposed to have good disease resistance too. So another little tip, something I learned and heard from Roy Diblick of Northwind Perennial Farm down in Burlington, Wisconsin, is when he would be doing jobs, he would always have some grass in his car. Now, I'm not talking about joint grass or the smokable kind. I'm talking about some actual prairie grasses. So he would have some little blue stem, some prairie drop seed, maybe some side oats grama, which we'll see back down there. And if he had a job that was missing a plant that died for whatever reason, he would always just like chuck a grass in there, because the grass adds that different texture, and it kind of looks good and works well with anything. So that's another idea to think about in your late season garden. Maybe you just want to add grasses to kind of like tie things together, especially if you have them spotted throughout your landscape. That can be a nice calming thing to add texture and to weave again your whole landscape together. And these guys do have these flowers here. Sometimes they're not as appreciated as obviously our beautiful colorful flowers, but prairie dropseed has kind of an interesting fragrance too. Some people like it, some people don't. Nobody seems to know what the heck it smells exactly like. But those are two like shorter grasses that you could use in a landscape. And I said the prairie, or the side oats grama, we'll check out later back there. This is rough blazing star that we're seeing here. So we're kind of in an area of the Grand Garden where it ramps up to some higher plants. So I'm going to go a little bit past that because sometimes it's difficult and challenging to get these really huge plants into your garden. But there is one called Indian grass right here And I wanted to point out the flowers, because look at that. You see the pretty little yellow in there, and it kind of color echoes the prairie dock, which is the plant behind us. That has a rosette of leaves and then these tall flower stalks that reach up above everything for light in the late summer garden. And this part of the garden you can see here, this is where we had our Baptisia, which is our spring blooming perennial in this section. It has these really cool, interesting decorative seed pods. And this is like, you know, what you might have if you have a lot of stuff that blooms at different times of the year. You kind of have these open areas. So here we have waves of color and masses like throughout our bed, but that's something you always have to think of when you have a strictly perennial garden is, you know, plants that are perennial typically don't bloom a huge bloom time, so maybe a couple weeks. So you have to think about your spring, summer, and fall bloom and where it's placed in your garden, and try to either have it in masses and waves if you like that, or sprinkled throughout your garden so you always have something in bloom throughout the whole bed. So here's again is our Rudbeckia. This little guy here is flowering spurge, Euphorbia correlata. That's kind of a nice little weaver plant that needs to be, in my opinion, like with other plants to kind of hold it up because it kind of falls over a little bit. And we're coming past Stachys humilo, which is a great plant that we use a lot throughout the garden because it has a decent bloom time. But again, it's in the mid-summer time of the year. And then as we come back down here, this is October Skies aster, which is just starting to bloom. It has this kind of lilac colored flower. So this will be a big massive flower power later in the fall. And again, we'll end up with just some, this is the Allium millennium I talked about when we first came out. And then this is that grass I mentioned, Voodoo curtipendula cytosgramma, which is a small, littler grass. It kind of has like a cool flower because it actually has a little orange in there. And you can see, again, some of these guys will seed out, like the agastache in this one. So it's not a bad thing, really, if you wanted to kind of weave, again, your whole area together, and you'll get plants that you could then actually transplant to other parts of your garden. So one plant can go a long way. So those are just some ideas of some native plants and cultivars that you can add to your own garden. Take a look at this time of the year, get some ideas here at Green Bay Botanical Garden. Maybe go back out to your nurseries at this time of the year and check them out and see what's in bloom so that you can add that late summer and fall flower power to your garden. And don't forget the grass. So for more information, come here, visit us at Green Bay Botanical Garden, and check out our website at gbbg.org and our Facebook.